Welcome to the Free Birth Podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
There are many ways to interact with Free Birth Society. These include our incredible offering, The Complete Guide to Free Birth, which is the most comprehensive online course available on how to give birth in your power. We also have a beautiful free birth meditation program called the Sovereign Birth Meditation Series, designed to help you release your fears and actualize your dream birth. Our latest course is called Through the Veil, a profoundly personal, radical pregnancy companion program by Yolanda Norris Clark that offers the opportunity to travel with Yolanda as she moves through the last trimester of her most recent pregnancy and invites you into her birth room to witness the birth of her 8th child. And if you're looking for a deeper connection and the opportunity for sisterhood in community with radical, like-minded women, the Free Birth Society private membership is for you, and you can apply on our website to become a member. We also offer personalized one-on-one transformational coaching with a focus on learning the tools to move out of victim consciousness and towards self-responsibility. Skills that translate to freedom, not only in the context of birth and mothering, but in every area of life. And finally, we are offering all of you, our amazing listeners, the free gift of Yolanda's 20-minute birth affirmations audio recording, a gorgeous, soothing meditation that every pregnant mother should have. So just head on over to our website at freebirthsociety.com, sign up, and Yolanda's affirmations will be sent directly to your inbox. We are closing out 2019 with a beautiful story. It's one of loss, reclamation, growth, and freedom. Leah joins me today to share her experience of discovering halfway through her first pregnancy that her daughter had passed. Leah speaks to how that inspired her to claim her birth experience in total power, love, and autonomy.
Well, it's so crazy what I was just sharing with you about how I woke up today. And since we last spoke, I'm like, okay, it's my due week. I wake up today, I think I'm pregnant. And then I just look at the calendar and I was like, I gave birth 3 months ago today. And like, there's just all this stuff happening. And it's so crazy because this is kind of like how my motherhood journey started, was that I was so obsessive and controlling about like my ovulation and my tracking and my diet and my healing, and like everything was like so overly controlled that it kind of like sucked the magic out of it. And I was like waiting to get pregnant until like this specific date, and we got pregnant right at that sex time, and you know, it was like really cool. But throughout my pregnancy, there was this feeling of like that I'm too controlled and I'm killing the magic, you know? So I guess I'll just take it back to when I conceived with my partner, and we were calling in a baby girl, and I had just like felt her so strongly. I had actually been feeling 2 spirit babies around me for about the past 10 years. And I kept thinking that I was pregnant with twins, and I was just like very neurotic in my pregnancy. And anyways, so my pregnancy was like, even though it was a conscious conception and all this stuff that sounds one way on paper, my actual reality of it was so exhausting and draining and unmotivating and like depressing almost. And that was a really hard reality to face after there was like so much planning that went into it.
Just because of who you were and how you were organizing around this pregnancy?
Yeah, I just was shocked that when I actually was finally pregnant, that I was just a miserable, like strange, depressed version of myself. And so as that time passed and I continued to be pregnant, I started feeling really healthy, and I was choosing to have I guess just like a wild pregnancy. I didn't have a doctor. I knew that I was going to free birth my baby before I ever got pregnant. That was always the plan. And
tell me a little bit about that. How did you align with that with a first baby?
Well, now that I've listened to your podcast so much, I laugh because I thought my story was like so unique. But just like everyone else, I found that woman, Laura
Shanley.
something. Yeah, Shanley. I found her work and the business of being born when I was like 18 years old, and it just blew my mind. And I remember thinking, this woman is psychotic. Like, this is insane, but also she's so intriguing. And I just kind of like put it on the back burner. And as my time of being a mother drew closer, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess I just knew. And I live pretty far outside of what I would call the mainstream. Like, I've always been my own healthcare provider, and I don't see doctors, I don't take medicine, I don't really like prescribe to any of those things. So it just made sense for me to take such an intimate experience into my own hands. Right. It was what I do with everything. So, yeah. So my pregnancy, I started feeling really, really good. And, my belly was growing to that point where you wake up in the morning and you just go, whoa, okay, it's another day. Like, it's just bigger and bigger and bigger. And, I think I was like around 23 weeks pregnant. And my mom came to visit. And this was a really pivotal moment in the pregnancy, because I've had like so much tension with my own relationship with my mother. And I really felt like I was carrying my daughter. And the day that my mom left, I was bedridden. So I just started sobbing. I was bawling. I was so depressed. I felt like I was just like dying. And I stayed in bed and I lost my appetite. And when I got up a few days later, I thought, wow, like hosting is so exhausting. That was kind of my thought. And I got up and my belly had shrunk, like a lot. And I felt that something was not right. And this is also sort of, it's like my weakness and my strength, that I just always feel like everything is okay on a really deep level, because I think that's true. And everything is always okay, and everything does always work out. And I'm so connected to that part of myself that it was tripping me out to feel like everything is okay. And then on another level, like something is terribly wrong. So I kind of teetered back and forth with these things for probably, I don't know, 5 days. And I thought, okay, I need to get my weight back up. And I started just like binge eating hamburgers and all of this stuff. And then nothing was working. And that nagging feeling of something is not right, it persisted. So I thought, okay, this is what an autonomous pregnancy looks like. Like, I'm listening to myself. And although I've chosen to do this alone up until now, like, I'm getting the feeling that I need to get something checked out. So I was kind of like, well, I don't want to see a midwife, but I thought, no, this is the whole point of being in charge, is that I'm in charge. So I got into a local midwife around here, and I had an okay experience seeing her. And she wanted to use the Doppler, and she also wanted to send me to an ultrasound. And I could tell that whatever I was going through was a little bit outside of her comfort zone. Yeah. So I chose not to use the Doppler, because if I was going to get an ultrasound, I didn't want to do both. So she ordered me an ultrasound, and then that took another week. So there's all this stuff going on. And so from the time that I experienced my first feelings of something is not right until the time I was sitting in an ultrasound was, I think, 2.5 weeks. It took that long. So, yeah. Really, the biggest trauma in this entire story for me is the part I'm about to share. It's not even the birth part, but so I had to drive about an hour and a half to get to this strange ultrasound clinic in a suburb, like mall parking garage place, which I told my partner, don't worry about it. I'm just going to go. Like, you can stay. He had something else going on, and we kind of teetered back and forth, and he really felt like he should come, but he stayed home. And I go into the office, and my heart is, racing, kind of like how it is now. And I got called back, and I think you know this, but maybe I'll just share this for people who don't know. So generally there's an ultrasound technician, and then there's a doctor, and they're two separate people. Well, I guess in my situation, it was two separate people. So I was told by the ultrasound technician that, she was going to do the ultrasound, and that I would talk to the doctor after. And she was pretty friendly at first. And she put that gel like all over my belly, and she turns the ultrasound machine on, and immediately I just see my dead baby floating, just like, kind of like, it was just so strange. And my heart just dropped. And she did not say a fucking word. She was silent, and she just kept doing the ultrasound. And somehow I just disassociated immediately. And I had like another part of my brain come in that was like, everything's fine. Even though I'm visually staring at the dead baby, I somehow was not processing the dead baby. And I was like, no, the baby's still alive. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing the ultrasound.
How did you know? Was it really just that obvious?
The dead baby?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like as if, imagine a real life dead baby like floating in the ocean.
Right.
Where their legs and their arms are just kind of dangling. And I've seen pictures or videos of other people getting an ultrasound, and you see the baby like moving around, and this baby was just floating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that compounded with this bizarre stranger alien experience with this woman not saying anything.
Yeah, she just turned into a cold, lifeless shell of a human. And of course it's uncomfortable for everyone, but as a care provider, even if you're just an ultrasound tech, like, couldn't you be human and like put your, like, I don't know, look at me and just be like, I'm really sorry? Or,
well, she's not allowed to share any information, right? And then also she has to shut down the human part of her to be a part of this technocratic model that has, they're like drones. And that's not to say that every single ultrasound technician is like that, of course, but I hear this story from so many women, the same words, this lifeless, just inhumane energy. It's so, I feel so sorry that was what you experienced. And I feel so sorry for that person's life. Like, that's her chosen job. Like, thank God you can go home and like be with people who can feel,
Yeah, I've tried to find compassion for her, or I don't even know if it's compassion, but just trying to wrap my mind around like her discomfort with that situation. So she continued the ultrasound for about 25 minutes.
What?
Yeah. And I just sat there. And that's how I convinced myself that everything was fine, because she just kept going and she was measuring every little part of every little thing. Obviously, there was a disconnect in my psyche because I was looking at something and like not processing it.
Well, and the environment you were in is totally bizarre. It completely contributed to you not processing it, because that makes total sense to me. If someone were to continue it, I would totally look for reasons of why what I'm seeing wasn't true. I think that makes total sense. But, and this really highlights the many, 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 many branches of cognitive dissonance and disassociating from our bodies that industrial, birth model creates.
Yeah. So then she stops the ultrasound and sends me into this little square room where I'm sitting at a table and I'm waiting for a doctor to come in. And so he walks into the room. I've never met him in my life. I've never seen him. It's not really a doctor's office. All they do is ultrasounds at this place. So he sits down and he says, I'm really sorry, but your baby is dead.
Mm.
And your baby has been dead for maybe 7 weeks. And at this point, I just lost it because, well, first of all, he was wrong. And second of all, I was immediately just so disgusted with myself that I had been supposedly carrying a dead baby for 7 weeks. I just I was crawling in my skin and I was like, oh, it was terrible. And I asked him why. He said, your baby is very waterlogged and she's already they are already breaking down and we're not really sure. And he told me I thought I was 26 weeks on the day of this ultrasound. He told me that this baby had died around 19 weeks. And I knew when the baby died. Right. I felt it. I had this whole experience. It was around 24 weeks. And I've had time to reflect about this and talk with a few other wise women. And, this doctor had no idea that I was about to go home and free birth my child. This doctor was trying to schedule me to get induced. And I think that he was actually doing me a favor by telling me that my child had passed at 19 weeks. Because once you hit 20 weeks of a pregnancy, you have to fill out paperwork. You have to get the county or the whatever involved. I think you have to have a burial. You have to go through all of these processes.
Yeah, it's considered a person. It goes from being a miscarriage to a stillborn. And so the stillborn needs a death certificate, and exactly, you couldn't just bury the fetus in your backyard. there's you're absolutely right. And so that is interesting, because a part of me just wondered, I wonder if he did that on purpose.
I think he did.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, he had no idea what I was about to go do.
Of course.
And I think most people in my situation would go get knocked out, have this thing sucked out, do whatever women do because they don't know their choices, their options. And
that compounded with that feeling of crawling out of your skin, that compounded with the only option to be what you just described is of course that's the response, right?
Yeah. So he essentially lied to me, and I'm thankful for him. I'm so thankful that he was kind, and he didn't push me to hurry and schedule my thing at the hospital. He just said, I'm going to give you time. I'm going to give these people your phone number and you have time. You can go home. And he was super nice about it. He told me the baby was about the size of my hand or something. I think he was just trying to downplay it for me and for the sake of legal things.
And all they can do is guess.
Right.
Right? Of course he wouldn't know why the baby didn't stay viable. Of course he wouldn't know exactly when the baby passed. There's no way that someone outside of you could concretely determine any of that. So, I mean, I believe that if anyone could, it would, of course, be you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So, the doctor left the office and, I called my husband, and he'll tell you to this day that this phone call is one of his deepest traumas of his lifetime. Last week I yelled out for him in the house, a really casual yell, and he came upstairs just like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Like, and he told me it triggered that phone call. So like anytime I yell out for him, I'm careful to be like, "Everything's okay, and can you help me with XYZ?"
Well, it's only been 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still real fresh.
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, which is the crazy part.
But then you have those markers, like him, running up afraid. You have those markers, I think, that really speak to how fresh it still is.
Yeah, exactly. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you went into the ultrasound, or even agreeing to the ultrasound and going by yourself and everything you just shared, and having this feeling for 2 weeks that something was wrong. Well, first of all, one thing I was wondering is, did you and your partner discuss the possibility of the baby having passed prior to this ultrasound? Like, was it even on your radar as a family?
I think yes, very much so. And it was not fully conscious. He, every day when I was pregnant, especially around that time before the baby passed, he's grabbing my belly in the morning and like, "How's my baby in there?" And, and as soon as the baby passed, he knew, and he was like, "I'm sorry. Like, I just don't feel like I can touch you." And, I can't get excited until you go to the doctor. That's all he kept saying was, I can't. But there was never a fully conscious conversation of like, I think the baby died.
Okay.
And it's even funny because I don't know if it's funny, but it's interesting because while the baby was dying, I had this thought come into my mind of maybe I was having twins and maybe one of them just died. Which is really funny because no, there was actually one baby and the baby did die.
But it's that's an understandable thought.
Yeah, because it felt like death.
Yeah.
So yeah, he knew something was wrong. We both knew, but I don't think it was fully present that the baby had passed.
Yeah.
And now that in retrospect, I understand when it happened.
Right.
And I understand my emotions and my hormonal acne just exploding and like all of the things that led to the ultrasound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you leave there, you have this information validated for you, you call your partner.
Yes, I'm fucking hysterical at this point, and I just am thinking, I'm a fucking idiot. How could I have lost this baby? I was just so hateful towards myself and like, I'm disgusting, and what is everyone going to think of me? And, every irrational, emotional, childish thing coming out of me.
Yeah, but those are really learned thoughts, It does open up this conversation that like in our society, the most, evil, ugly, thing to do is to lose a child. Women are so vilified against it. Women are so shamed for it. There's really a very, very real and obviously horribly misplaced, cultural misogyny, that as you already know, our culture holds some space for women being the bearers of life, but no space for women being the bearers of death. And it's just such an interesting conversation because we are not responsible for the life and death of our babies in utero. We are the instruments, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say almost 100% of women, with a wanted pregnancy want their baby to be born alive and well, right? I mean, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we were responsible, all of our babies would live, right? Like if we got to make that decision, all of our babies would live because we want our babies to live. It's our biological imperative, it's our spiritual imperative, all of it. But anyway, so I know I work with women who have who experience loss, and it's such a common feeling from miscarriage all the way through to full term loss. This feeling of like repulsion and at
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and this like gross feeling of failure, or what are people going to think of me? And is there really a sadder thing, that's our programming to think that in such a painful time, to like be compounded with those extra,
Mm.
nasty thoughts.
I I know myself, and I know that I don't go to those places hardly ever.
Mm.
And so I think I just needed to get that out.
Mm-hmm.
But for anyone who has lost a baby, especially further along where you can already feel where they are and everything, it just feels really creepy to be like looking down and you can feel the shape of the baby, but it's dead.
Mm.
It's just this kind of like you're trapped in your body. You can't get away from this thing, Um,
So tell me a little bit about what happens for you, where kind of the obvious path laid out for you by the doctor is to go, get anesthetized and have the baby removed. What happens for you that you obviously don't go and do that? Tell me about
yeah.
that part.
I'm not exactly sure what my options were for for this baby, but when I was at the appointment, the doctor told me, because I said, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now that this baby's dead? I want to get as far away from this as possible.
Yeah.
And now I'm stuck with this reality. And what the hell am I supposed to do? So he said, well, you have to give birth. And I just thought, no, like that wasn't the plan.
Mm.
Like I planned this, you don't know, but I planned every moment of this, and this is not the plan that I had, So he didn't tell me, he said I would have to go in and get induced with Pitocin, and that I would actually have to labor and give birth. He didn't give me an option that I could have the baby sucked out. Forgive me for like my crude terminology. I don't know the correct terms for all these things, but
Well, I mean, it is a vacuum,
okay.
what you're referring to. It is, and it is quite dark because they do break the baby up into pieces in with the vacuum.
Okay.
And the baby comes out in pieces. So it is a rather crude process.
Okay. Yeah, he didn't give that as an option. So I still don't know if that was an option. But as far as the story goes, it wasn't. And
Mhm.
so, it took me about 12 hours to just even come back into my body after the news, and to remember that I know how to give birth. And I just had this moment where I just said, snap out of it, Leah. Like, the plan that you had, the control that you think you have, like, all of that, it's over. It's done. Like, you're not living in reality. And this is reality. And you have to face it. Like, you can't just like live in this other bubble about all of your baby plans because they're not real. And I had to have like a little pep talk with myself. And it was like a tough love kind of pep talk. And I snapped out of it and I said, okay, like I have the hospital calling me. They're leaving voicemails. I'm ignoring them. And it's time for me to call back my birth plan. Like, what is my birth plan? Because I'm not having my nightmare birth at a hospital right now with a dead baby on the other side. Like, it's just not happening. And so I started reaching out to my sister is a birth worker. One of my best friends is a birth worker. And, I just started calling my people and kind of like asking people, like, how do I give still birth? Like, I don't know anything about this. I actually I was able to talk on the phone with Yolanda. And she really helped ground me into reality, reminding me that, it's birth. It's the same thing. Like, stillbirth is birth, and just really grilling that into my mind. So in an ideal, picture perfect reality, I thought, okay, well, I know my baby's dead, so hopefully I will just go into labor. I would love that. And it wasn't happening. And I was realizing that it could take days or weeks before this process just happens. And as much as I'm like an all natural, do it yourself type person, I was like, I can't sit here with this dead baby for 6 more weeks or 3 more weeks. Like, I just can't. I need to move forward with my life. So I chose to find some misoprostol, which is known as the abortion pill. And I planned that I was going to induce myself with that. So a little back into story mode with it is that I had called my girlfriend who's a birth worker, and she was planning to just be my best friend at my birth, at my full-term birth. And when I called her, she said, I'll drive down right now. She had to drive down about 6 hours from Humboldt. So she said, I'll come right now. Like, we'll just do what you're going to do. And there was so much fear mongering coming at me through my sister and my girlfriend and their larger communities. They were reaching out to. I didn't have the capacity to get online and start talking with people. I just like outsourced that. And, people were just, they couldn't believe that I was going to do this at home, and I was going to bleed to death, and my baby was going to come out in pieces, and just like the absolute terror that people had that I could potentially just do this at home, and no one was supporting it. And then they also would say, but let us know after, like, oh my God, like, how could this woman do this? She's this and that and this and that, but let us know. Like, this totally disgusting thing. Yeah.
I mean, and it never ends, right? Even with a live baby, it's the same treatment. Even, from conception to postpartum, it is mind blowing to the mainstream who don't think for themselves and who don't make their own sovereign decisions. It is mind blowing because they've never seen it. It's like left the cultural zeitgeist or whatever the right word is. It's not in their sphere as a safe reality because everyone has been scared into the hospital for everything. So
Yeah.
it's this kind of like fascination and horror, that mainstream people
Hmm.
have about a woman making sovereign choices against what they know to be like the only safe way. So it doesn't end with I mean, it's you already know this, obviously. It's constant, even like not taking your kid to a pediatrician or like not wanting to give them a vaccine or like
Hmm.
anything, right? It's just like horror and fascination at the same time. So, but anyway, okay, so you're navigating all of that and you are really aligning with, I'm going to get the miso, I'm going to pass this baby, I'm going to birth this baby in my home. I'm going to
Hmm.
reclaim and I'm going to accept reality, align with reality, and still have a birth that feels um, like safe and intuitive.
Totally. Yeah. So, the crying and all of that sort of energy burned out pretty quick for me and for my partner, and we just got down to like business. And I was just like preparing what are the things that we need to do this, and it's time to just shut everything else out because I have a really huge task ahead and I can't be distracted. So I um I had, let's see. So I started cleaning the house and mopping the floors and doing the laundry and just like really deep cleaning the space. I had been planning to birth upstairs in that space that you just saw earlier. And um, I was doing some meditation earlier in my pregnancy of what my birth was. And I had envisioned it a certain time of day, a certain space, everything, like all these little details. And as I was setting everything up, I realized, oh, this is the birth that I've been journaling about the whole time, except for the baby's not alive. And the thing is, I could never see the baby alive. In all of my journaling, I could see the labor, I could see everything except for like a crying baby at the end. And so I just thought, this has always been my story. And really like claiming that as like, no, this is and was always my path. And it's time that I get to step into that instead of being some victim of a reality.
Right. And
Um,
that this beautiful, idea that death doesn't have to be a punishment,
mm,
that it can exist as it does without a story and even without resistance, and of course our whole culture experiences death unless you're like 100 on your deathbed, experiences it as a punishment to everyone else. And that it doesn't have to be that loss and death is absolutely a part of a woman's story and a woman's womb and our collective womanhood. And it just sounds like you just did such a beautiful job of, like you said, claiming it and aligning with it and just being like, okay, like let's just do this as best as I can.
yeah, thank you. There was so much journaling during the pregnancy, like knowing that I was choosing free birth, of contending with death
Mm-hmm.
and contending with just what is it going to look like if I actually take responsibility for myself? And I think that was such a hard part of my journey towards free birth, was taking responsibility, because it's it was easy for me to be a victim. And I was scared to take responsibility, because what if something happened to the baby and it's my fault? Like, what will people think, and what will I think? And um, I can say with confidence that it was nothing like that. And taking responsibility was just, it was completely empowering
Yeah.
to me. And yeah.
And that I find that the more responsibility I take, the more the concept of fault and blame don't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see.
So you're
Let's
setting
get
up
in.
your space,
Yeah.
you're deep cleaning, without naming names. How do you get the miso?
So I was able to contact a local midwife, who actually doesn't want to be named.
Yeah, of
Surprise.
course.
And she was, it was interesting because she really didn't want to give it to me. And I kind of had to make a plea to her. And I said, look, like, this is my birth. This is what I'm doing. I didn't ask. I said, this is what I'm doing. Are you going to be the person that supports me? Because I'm going to do it with or without you. And if you help me, this will make it a lot easier in my reality, you know? And, you know, she went through all the dangers and risks, and, you know, she was really scared. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be in her scope of what she's comfortable with.
Well, and it's interesting that she even had it. Like, so what is she using it for? It's, you know, it's cytotech. So she's using it for, you know, a last ditch effort to prevent hemorrhage, you know,
Yeah.
postpartum. Like, so she's using it in this totally different, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds very clearly like most licensed midwives are not carrying cytotech, you know, to help women pass, you know,
Yeah.
stages that are no longer viable, or for abortion support.
Yeah. I mean, a good midwife, however you want to put that, I'm sure keeps that on hand for all the situations that women experience. But it's depending on where you live and what kind of access you have. And thankfully, if she wasn't going to give it to me, I was just going to go down the line. And I live in an area where that's how it is here. So I'm thankful for that.
So you get the miso.
Yeah. So I get the miso, and my girlfriend shows up, and we just kind of have a slow day. And we knew that I was going to start the process in the evening. She had traveled down with her twin 3-year-old daughters.
Whoa.
And so, who are amazing, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, they could be sleeping, or, so I retreat upstairs into the bath, and I oil my whole body and just like get in there, and I start to meditate. And I have this very powerful vision come into my mind of my mother, and how I'm reminded of this mantra that I said early pregnancy of, I am not my mother. I am not my mother. I am not my mother. Because my mother has preterm births, and all 4 of us preterm, and really low baby weight, and just like not the birth that I wanted to have, you know. And so there's this vision that comes forward, and I see that we can never not be our mothers in one essence. Like we can choose different outcomes, but we can't rid ourselves of our mothers, and we're not supposed to, I don't think. And I saw how there's like birth karma and like things that connect us through the womb space. And I have 2 other sisters. I saw how each of those sisters played out a birth similar to what my mom had. Like one being an emergency, or not emergency, but like a C-section, and then another one being like a very preterm labor. And then I looked at myself and I all of a sudden remembered that my mom's 5th pregnancy was a stillbirth. And I thought, wow, okay, this is the birth karma that I share with my mother. And I remembered how traumatic that experience was for her, like terrible. And I thought, wow, like no matter how much self-work we do, like there's these things that we have to play out. And here I am, I could have easily been whisked away and replayed the same trauma. And in a split moment, I chose something else, and that's healing,
That's beautiful.
And yeah, so in that moment, I really felt like, okay, this is supposed to be happening. This is my path. Like I could get 100% on board with this. And, the evening progressed, and around 7:30, after just like praying and meditating, I had all of my herbs and things like just in case for all of these risk factors. And I let them all go, all of those fears. And I just was like, look, Leah, you think you can control everything. You could have never controlled or even conceived of what your reality is right now. And so you have to just trust that it leads somewhere and that you can't control it. So I just had a moment of surrender completely. And I took these pills vaginally. And within about 30 minutes, I started having sensations. And I thought, wow, okay. Because also when I read online about the pill, it said anywhere from 3 to like 48 hours or something.
Yeah.
So I just said, I have no idea what's in store for me, So I'm having sensations. I send Amanda Ring, her name, and Casey, my husband. I send them to bed. And I get into the hot tub outside. And the stars are out and the full moon was coming up. It was like, I don't know, a few days past full. And I'm just like laboring and looking up at the moon and just like really moving through these contractions. And I have a feeling like, okay, I need to get out of this tub. Like I feel like I need to be inside. I feel too exposed. So I go upstairs and my poor husband is snoring so loud and just passed out. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to disturb him. And then I'm like, it's my birth. This is my birthing space. So, I start just like moaning. I can't really control the sensations. They're getting like really strong. And I had taken a second dose of medicine at this point. Out of nowhere, I have this intense urge to rip my pants off. And it's like something primal. It's not like a conscious mind thing. And I rip my pants off. And then all of a sudden my water just like bursts everywhere. Oh, it's such a relieving feeling when your water breaks. Oh my God. And I thought, okay, like this is happening. Casey jumps up out of bed. He's stumbling over shit, trying to grab towels, and he wakes up Amanda. And it's just full fucking throttle from there on. And I have never, this was my first pregnancy, so I don't have any reference for what birth can look like. And I'm thinking seems more intense than normal. Not that I know what normal is, but I just feel like, okay, I don't even have a break. It's just contraction after contraction. And somehow, I'm really like cold. So I'm wearing this turtleneck and wool socks just with my yoni out, just like marching. And I can't relax either. I was hoping I'd be one of those laboring women who's like laying in bed and I'm having this like sensual.
Not on 2 rounds of Cytotec.
No way.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
I am marching around my room having contractions. I flip on my birth playlist. I'm marching around my birth altar space, and just the sounds, they just start coming out. Like these sounds, I could not even replicate them if I tried. They were coming from so deep inside of me, and they were just shaking the house. And it was just to the point where I was losing my voice, And I finally end up in the bathroom on the toilet. And I'm going from standing up during a contraction and then squatting and then standing up and squatting and standing up and, just over and over, probably 500 times. And it almost feels like an exorcism of sorts. And I am so high and my pupils are just completely dilated. My amazing birth attendants, are just completely removed. They never talked to me. They never touched me. They're sitting in the dark, just completely holding it down. My husband at this point is sitting a few feet across from me, just watching, not trying to fix anything. He was like the perfect man. Because no one wants to see their partner like that, And he wasn't like, oh, can I rub your hips? He just was silent. And I called in Amanda Ring, and I had a feeling that I was like in transition, but I didn't know. I've never given birth. And so I'm asking her, how much longer? How much longer? And she's like, longer than you think you can handle or whatever. And there was just this look between us. Like we both kind of knew where I was, but there's no way either one of us was going to name it, because what if we're wrong? Mm-hmm. And I decide to hop in the shower, and I asked my partner to get in, and that lasted about 5 seconds before I'm yelling at him to get out of my space, And wow, the sensations are so intense. And I squat down and I call Amanda back in, and I just, somehow there's this space that opens where I'm not having sensations. And I tell her, I am so defeated. I cannot do this. Like, how much longer? I just can't do this. And I think I want to get pregnant again, and I'm going to have to give birth again. And I have like this kind of pity party for myself. And then my next contraction, she crowns. And I feel, I guess it's a mini ring of fire because it's a mini baby, but I feel the ring of fire. And I'm squatting down with my hands on the tile, and I just reach under, and she just glides right out into my hands. And it's so wild because, you think you're in the worst pain of your life, and then just like in the blink of an eye, it's gone. You don't even feel, or I didn't feel any pain. Like it's the opposite of pain. And so I'm holding her in my hands just right under my vagina, and I'm scared to look down.
Yeah.
You know. So I asked my partner, you know, could you replace your hands with my hands or whatever so that I can look down? Because I don't feel like I can look down. And then he's like, yeah, I can. So he comes towards me, and her cord was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 inches long, very short cord. So I couldn't actually lift her away from my yoni at all. So he's holding our baby, and I look down, and I just feel like so much relief. All I could say was, thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Like I just could not. She was so messed up looking. And I knew when I saw her and held her that it just never would have worked, you know? And, you know, I didn't even know what I had pushed out of me. I was told it would be clots. She would be unrecognizable. She would be the size of a hamburger or whatever. She was 10 inches long. She was huge. I was not a 19-week-old baby. And yeah, it was just, I just had so much gratitude and no sadness whatsoever. I just knew it was supposed to be. And, you know, we put her into a little bowl, and I kind of like waddled over to my bed with the bowl in between my legs because, you know, the placenta's still inside. And I just lay down on my bed, and I hear the song is ending. And it's the song that I always thought I would give birth to. And it's called I Release Control. And I thought, no fucking way. I lay down on the bed, and I feel wrecked. And I just want to like close my eyes and sleep. I don't even look at the baby. I haven't touched her. I don't know it's her. I'm like, I just need to come down from that. Holy shit. And, you know, my friend Amanda, she wants to touch my belly, and I tell her, no, like, just, I don't want anyone to touch me. I just need to lay here. And, you know, I tell them I'll birth the placenta after this song. So I'm just laying there kind of like chanting the song that's on, and laying with my husband, and just like lots of deep breathing, and the song ends, and I get up into a squat over the bowl, and the placenta is just like whoosh, like it just comes right out, you know? And I thought, could it really be that simple? Like, and just to kind of mention, like, I never bled at all during the birth. It was a bloodless birth. And I was told that I would like hemorrhage to death. And so I just thought like, wow, there was never any blood. And even when she came out, there was no blood. And there was like a little bit of blood when the placenta detached, but, you know, and the hormones are just like flowing. And, I felt like superhuman. So I immediately get up out of bed, and we walk her over to the altar space that I had, and we turn the lights up, and I got to spend time. I just smelled her. I touched her. I just inspected every millimeter of her body. I found out it was her, you know, and I thought I knew the whole time that it was her. And she had like, now I know what she had. It's called hydrops. And it's a series of events that lead to the baby like not being able to process and assimilate their fluids. And so they just become like engorged, and it like swells up into their brain, and then eventually they just kind of die because they can't, they like drown. And she looked kind of like a water balloon baby. And she had like little round like balloon hands with like tiny little fingers like popping out. And it wasn't sad. I think if she came out looking like a perfect little angel,
Sure,
I would have thought, what's wrong? Like, what happened? Why
right.
are
But
you?
with this, it was so visually obvious and probably affirming that this was perfect in the way it unfolded.
Yeah. I really, all I could say is thank you, baby. I just kept like a repeat, like, thank you, baby, thank you, baby. And I said, you were a smart baby. Like, you knew. And thank you for doing it when you did it, because I didn't want to deliver you at 37 weeks. And, you know, yeah, I mean, I had all the same things that you would expect after you give birth. And my milk came in. My tits were like a size triple J. And for obviously people can't see me, but I have like a small A boob. So my boobs were like up to my collarbones, and I couldn't even put my arms down. And I was wearing cabbage leaves and postpartum bleeding and pads, and just I still had to go through all those things. And it was so much work to take care of myself in that time period. I just kept feeling like I am so thankful I don't have a baby, because that would be so much right now. And this is already so much. And yeah, and she was not a 19-week-old baby. She was big. And, you know, I'm so glad that we got to keep her at home. And I never had a paper trail of medical records. I was just an invisible person, and I got to have my experience, and I got to bury her on my land. And what seemed like a very normal series of events for me in that regard. And yeah.
I remember when we chatted when we first met, and you were I think about 2 months postpartum. Now you're 3 at the time of this recording. And I remember, being really struck by your groundedness and your choice of words, that you loved your birth and that you weren't sad, and that the birth of a stillborn, it's so, that's like big language, to use, that you weren't sad, and that you loved your birth and that you felt at peace. And that was why I wanted you to come on the podcast to share, because you're not the only mom I know who has experienced loss, and said that same stuff. But there's almost like this, there's almost like this thing that does, like, there's not a lot of space for that in culture. It's so assumed that you're going to be, in deep grieving and in pain, and it is not at all to dismiss the women who are grieving and in deep pain. That is so, 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 so deeply valid and understandable and absolutely right for plenty of people to experience loss that way. And it's just as valid and just as right that you experience loss this way, and that it just is so obvious in your story that you just aligned with reality so quickly
Mm.
and said yes to the experience. And even you saying like, oh, postpartum took so much work for myself and I just was so thankful I didn't have a baby. I could imagine someone hearing that being like, whoa. But the thing is, that is, you are expressing from a space of aligning with reality. And the reality is you didn't have a baby. And someday I'm sure that you will. And you won't think the same thing, like you
Right.
probably, when your next baby is with you, and you're experiencing postpartum, I bet you will never even have the thought, I wish I didn't have this baby, right? Because you will
Totally.
once again be in alignment with reality. And that's all that this is. That to me, that's like the biggest takeaway about your story that I'm so moved by and that I appreciate so much is your ability and your emotional intelligence and your maturity to align with reality and say yes to that and move forward in that yes. And that's kind of like the most beautiful thing that we can do, and the kindest thing we can do to ourselves is to just go, okay, this is happening. How can I do this? And how can I create a yes here in the face of, something that you never like objectively wanted, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that's been one of the hardest parts of my postpartum is that my birth was so ecstatic. It was my dream birth,
Hmm.
except for that my baby wasn't alive,
Of
but
course.
everything about it was just like the best thing that has ever happened to me. And that's so hard to like convey to people. And like my loss is triggering everyone else's loss story. And so like I've found myself having to hold so much space for people in their trauma,
Wow.
which I've been able to because I feel so amazing. um but it's just like, even my own mother, when she heard my story, she just said, wow, like I didn't know that it could be like that. Her story was so terrible. And even to this day, she'll still call and be like, but how are you? Like she's expecting
Hmm.
that I'm not okay. And I've really had to check in with myself. Like I've searched for sadness and I'll be driving and I feel like, okay, like it's been a few months, like it's your due week, like maybe there's some sadness in there. So I'll put on like a really sad song and see if I can like conjure up the thing. And it's just like, it's not my truth. Yeah. And I wouldn't trade it. Like, even if someone said, well, you can have your baby, but like you don't get that experience, I would just say no because um I mean, I'm like transformed at my core, as any woman who has given birth knows. Like I've been blasted open
Mm.
and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Right. And it's reminding me of one of my favorite quotes by Byron Katie, which is all suffering comes from not accepting what is. All mental
Mm.
suffering, comes from not accepting what is. And what I'm really hearing in your story is deep, deep, deep acceptance. And when there's acceptance, there is peace. And when there is peace, there is no suffering. So that you experienced loss, which comes with all this like expectation of how you're going to be and feel. But so much of the pain of loss is not being able to accept it. why did it happen? They should be here. This shouldn't have happened. I had other plans for this baby. I was going to be, and they're totally understandable. In zero way am I trying to take away from the deep, 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 deep pain of loss that so many women experience, of course. And that you are this, in my mind, this beacon of light of an example of someone who, was willing to accept it and willing to be at peace and therefore is not suffering.
Yeah. Sharing my story has been such an important part of this process for me, because I'm realizing that there are really not stories like mine.
Right.
And maybe there are somewhere and people are hiding them, but like I haven't been able to find anyone anywhere. And I just like I don't want people to lose their child while they're growing their baby. Like I don't want people to go through that, but if that comes up in your reality, like I want women to know that that's an option. And I will go as far to say that it's the best option if you're ready to take that on. And someone else, like for someone else, that's going to be their deepest life trauma. And for me, it's like one of the richest, best experiences of my life. So
it like set you free.
Yeah, completely. And I just really am about women like reclaiming these things. Pregnancy, release, stillbirth, abortion, birth,
right.
like all these
They're
things.
ours.
They are. And that we can be empowered and like make these choices. So
yeah. And I definitely know women who have experienced loss who didn't suffer from it, and who really saw it to be the path and the way and made peace with it. But you're right. I think there's not a lot of people, who have the spaciousness in their lives to like shout that from the rooftops.
Totally.
Yeah. So I really admire and honor that you are willing to claim it so deeply and share this story in a public format. Because those women are out there, and they're going to be, happy to hear this story. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully I'll have another free birth story of a live baby in the near future.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm sure that's in your future. Anything else you want to say or share before we close?
There's just nothing quite like a free birth. Yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story and just so rich. Like you said, that's such a good word for it. It'll be so interesting to stay connected with you and see what you co-create with the universe with this next pregnancy.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was clear for the listeners, but you woke up this morning realizing you were in your anticipated due week. So you would have been in your 40th week had that baby stayed alive. And you woke up this morning wondering if you were pregnant because your blood hadn't come. That's a really, really, really magical, potent time to be sharing this story. And
yes,
thank you for bringing us along with you on the journey.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. So I really appreciate it.
I'm popping on here at the end to say it's been quite a few weeks since we recorded this conversation, and Leah did confirm with me last night that she is indeed pregnant with new life. I'm sending all my love and appreciation out to you courageous women who travel with me and my guests on this podcast, and we will see you in the new year. That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Free Birth Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.